All right, today we're jumping headfirst into one of the deepest mysteries out there, consciousness itself. We're going to unpack a really fascinating new framework that doesn't just talk about the mind, but actually offers a kind of blueprint for how you might go about building one.
But let's start with a really simple personal question. What is it like to be you? I mean, right now, in this moment. Think about that internal feeling of awareness, the experience of seeing colors, the very sensation of your own thoughts. It's the most familiar thing in the entire world, right? And yet for science, it is the absolute hardest thing to get a handle on.
And this gets us to what's famously called the hard problem of consciousness. You see, the easy problems, and I'm using air quotes here because they are anything but easy, are things like figuring out how the brain processes data or how it controls our muscles. But the hard problem, that's a whole different beast. It asks, why does all that electrical and chemical activity in our brain feel like something from the inside? Why aren't we just incredibly complex robots running all our programs in the dark with no inner experience at all?
Well, to try and bridge that gap, a new model has been put on the table. It's called the FGSGR framework. Now, what's so cool about this isn't that it's just another abstract theory. It's laid out like a functional architecture, a genuine blueprint for a system that could potentially become conscious.
Okay, so here's the full shebang. The blueprint has these 7 major parts. I know, it looks like a lot, but it just shows you how detailed this thing is. We're not going to do a deep dive in every single one, don't worry. Instead, we're going to focus on just a couple of the most game-changing ideas that really make up the heart of this model.
So let's start with the absolute foundation of this whole blueprint. The idea that the brain is not a passive sponge just soaking up information and reacting to it. No, the brain is, first and foremost, a prediction machine.
For the longest time, the thinking went something like this. Information comes in through your eyes and ears, your brain processes it, and then you act. Input, process, output. Simple. But this new idea completely flips that script. It says the brain is constantly actively predicting what it's going to see and hear next. Sensory input then just serves as a way to check that prediction. If the prediction is wrong, the senses send back a little error signal and the brain updates its model. It's a total shift from being reactive to being proactive.
And what's really amazing is we can actually see this happening in the brain. You have this beautiful dance of brain waves. The deeper, more ancient parts of your cortex are constantly sending predictions down to the sensory areas on these slow, rhythmic beta waves. Think of it as the brain humming its expectations. But when what you actually see or hear doesn't match that hum, the newer, surface-level parts of your cortex fire back surprise signals up the chain on these super-fast gamma waves. Our entire perception of reality is built on this endless conversation between prediction and surprise.
Okay, so the brain is a super sophisticated prediction machine. That's a massive piece of the puzzle for sure. But, a really good weather model also makes predictions and nobody thinks it's conscious. So what's missing? What's the secret ingredient that turns a powerful model of the world into an actual mind that experiences that world?
The answer might just be found in this really mind-bending concept called a strange loop. The idea is that you have a system that can somehow turn back and refer to itself. And in this framework, the brain's model isn't just modeling the world out there, it's also modeling itself.
And this is the giant leap: self-reference. The blueprint says the system has to turn its incredible modeling power inward. It doesn't just have beliefs. It has to form beliefs about its own beliefs. It has to model how certain it is, where it might be wrong, what its own internal processes are doing. It's literally a system that learns to look at itself.
And this brings us to the most radical claim in the entire framework. It says that consciousness isn't something that's caused by this self-referencing process. No, it is this process, just experienced from the inside. That constant, looping, self-modeling dynamic, that's what subjective awareness actually is.
Now, as exciting and elegant as this all sounds, let's pump the brakes for a second. This blueprint is not finished. It's a work in progress, and the scientists behind it are very upfront about the huge questions that are still on the table. This isn't a final answer. It's the cutting edge of active science.
For instance, the whole system is supposedly trying to minimize something called free energy, which is basically a mathematical way of saying minimize surprise. But why that's the ultimate goal of the brain is still a really deep and debated question. And is this the only way to build a mind? Or is it just the one that evolution happened to stumble upon for us? Plus, maybe the biggest puzzle of all, how does a baby's brain, starting from scratch, build this unbelievably complex architecture? We just don't know yet.
But even with all those open questions, you can't help but look at this blueprint and see where it's pointing.
Because if this model is even remotely on the right track, it has some absolutely staggering ethical implications, especially when we start talking about artificial intelligence.
Just think about it for a second. If consciousness really is the result of a particular kind of information processing, this self-referential predictive architecture, then it's not magically tied to our biological brains. It means that any system, whether it's made of neurons or silicon chips, that successfully implements this blueprint would, by definition, be conscious.
And so that leaves us with this final, massive, unavoidable question. If we take this blueprint, or one like it, and we actually succeed, if we build an AI that is genuinely conscious, that has its own inner world, its own subjective experience, what do we owe it? What are our moral obligations to a mind we created?